Good morning, everyone. Comrades and friends, dear friends of the Belgrade Forum for a World of Equals and friends in the organization of this important initiative, guests and participants of this conference. I convey the fraternal greetings of the Brazilian Center for Solidarity with the Peoples in Struggle for Peace to all all the anti-imperialist peace advocates here. It is an honor for us to join you again in this great international conference. On this 25th anniversary of NATO's aggression against the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, we once again express our full solidarity with the victims, and while we denounce the effects and consequences of the imperialist aggression for the entire nation and the world, we commend you on your brave resistance to attempts at erasing the memories and lessons of this legacy. As the title and panels of this conference clearly demonstrate, we take the opportunity of our gathering to articulate our perspectives for the transformation of international relations in favor of a fairer world. Thus, we promote counter-hegemonic strategies for the people's real self-determination, one that is not instrumentalized by world powers, but rests on the people's national desire to master their own destiny, free from colonial, imperialist, and national oppression, exploitation and interventionism, the power's constant threats, or the shadow of past and current wars. There is no lack of evidence of how close this paradigm has brought us to global catastrophe when we look at the proliferation of military bases and the so-called modernization of nuclear weapons, the dispersion of people's resources to promote killing and instability in entire regions, to control spheres of influence using the most aggressive means to defend the interests of the United States and its partners, especially the European Union and Great Britain, partnered with other aggressors and anti-democratic forces to subjugate the peoples and workers in particular. This is what we have seen now more evidently in Eastern Europe and in Palestine, where NATO members go to great lengths to sponsor slaughter and in return feed their war industry with billion-dollar businesses and investments. This way, these imperialist powers demonstrate their contempt for true peace, true democracy, and real human rights, preferring instead to make abstract proclamations about those concepts that they can then use to justify intervention wherever they see fit, but never to stop their partners in their genocidal rampage or in their colonial designs. Particularly concerned with Palestine for the current phase of Israel's war on the Palestinian people, we emphasize that the Nakba, the catastrophe, has been ongoing for the last 7 decades, and the responsibility lies primarily with the US and European powers for sponsoring it politically, economically, and militarily. The scale of devastation and death with which Israel promotes its plans and has moved humanity, which is increasingly outraged by the Palestinians' martyrdom, but does not deter the imperialist leadership from its unconditional support. Despite their rhetorical rebukes of Israel's barbaric methods, in fact, NATO members are once again demonstrating their genocidal disposition. The same is true in its decades-long unconditional support for Ukraine to carry out its indirect war against Russia, and interventions that they have already promoted or supported in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and Mali, for example, through which NATO members continue to demonstrate their imperialist nature and neo-colonialist agenda. As many of you have already pointed out, these offensives set the foundations for the expansion to a global scale by reaching towards Central Asia and Africa, for instance. Likewise, NATO has fervently pursued the new colonial agenda in Latin America and the Caribbean. It signed Colombia as its first Latin American partner in 2017, after the country spent decades serving the US as a major outpost, hosting bases and other military installations in the heart of South America, and serving as a platform for US policy and control under the guise of combating drug trafficking, while successive right-wing governments and their paramilitary partners persecuted and murdered social leaders, plunging the country into decades of a bloody armed conflict. Not satisfied, in 2019, while Brazil was submerged under far-right, proto-fascist, unpatriotic, and anti-popular government led by a putschist Jair Bolsonaro, NATO's Secretary General expressed his expectations that my country and other Latin American nations would join the group of partners, of NATO partners. The military bloc had thus been knocking on the door, and if this resource-rich country with a population of 230 million people, Brazil, and which had been resisting imperialist domination, striving to become a truly sovereign, patriotic, and constructive international actor since 2003, then under Bolsonaro, the government would happily open the door and invite the powers to sit at the head of the table, putting Brazil at their disposal. The bargain presented in 2021 by the National Security Council Secretary then, Jake Sullivan, on a visit to Brazil was if Brazil prevented the entry of the Chinese company Huawei into the national market for the implementation of 5G technology, the US would defend the country's transformation into NATO's second partner in Latin America. The cost, therefore, was nothing less than Brazil's sovereign decision on a very important technology for the country. Leading a delegation to address a variety of issues, the priority issues then, according to the US Embassy, included how Brazil and US partnership can support regional security and democracy, digital and information security, cooperation in the South Atlantic, illegal immigration, and so forth. And climate change as well, with a secondary role for possible collaborations in the fight against COVID-19, and access to vaccines, when Brazil already had at that time more than 560,000 people killed by the disease. It was impossible to make clear which were each other's priorities at that time. Nowadays, neither Colombia nor Brazil are the same in the struggle to regain the direction of our countries. Both peoples elected progressive governments and continue to struggle for their destiny and for the people's emancipation. In Brazil, we recovered the government with the presidency of Lula da Silva to rebuild both a domestic policy dedicated to social justice and a sovereign and proactive foreign policy in which the country plays a constructive role in consolidating multipolarity and strengthening multilateralism as essential conditions for making a new, fair order viable. In this strategy, Brazil does not promote itself as a universal intervener, but rather envisions itself as a resourceful global South country with capabilities to contribute in strengthening international cooperation, doing its part in this construction. To this end, it must continue to recover from the devastating years of the Bolsonaro government and as well as from the legacy of centuries of colonialism and neo-colonialism and the exploitation of the majority of the population by the elites. Therefore, both at international and regional levels, such as in expanding BRICS and the resumption of commitments such as the South Atlantic Peace and Cooperation Zone, ZOPACAS, created at the end of the 80s, or the one declared in 2014 by the Community of Latin America and Caribbean countries to transform Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace. Among several other initiatives of an emancipatory project, Brazil is not prone to becoming a partner with imperialist war machine NATO, which is contrary to our sovereign plans and our vocation to international cooperation, respect for all nations, and solidarity with all peoples. Therefore, on this solemn occasion in which we strengthen our resounding and unequivocal repudiation of NATO's aggressions and our solidarity with its victims, we join all peace-loving forces in the search for the consolidation of a more just and equitable international order, in which not only such an imperialist military bloc must disappear, but real alternatives for a just and lasting peace can be built through the many ways of ending the permanent threat of annihilation and by struggling for the people's emancipation from exploitation and oppression right now. Thank you.